To freeze or not to freeze? That's the question we're going to tackle today. I'm going to show you what the best and the worst foods are for freezing. One of the most common misconceptions I hear all the time is, I can freeze anything. And while technically that's true, you can freeze anything, the results of thawing doesn't always come out how you want it. In my cookbook, Seriously Good Freezer Meals, I have a great chapter in here full of information on what is great to freeze and what isn't so great to freeze. So to teach you this, I thought we could play a little game. I'm your game show host, Care Truman. Today we're gonna be playing Can I Freeze That? This is a game that you're gonna test the bounds of your knowledge to find out if you truly know what you can freeze and what you can't freeze. The first mystery item is cheese. Can you freeze cheese? If you guessed yes, then you'd be right. And if you guess no, you'd be right too. Some cheeses work really great for freezing and other cheeses don't do so well for freezing. First thing I wanted to mention is that this is a hard cheese, and hard cheeses typically do very well with freezing. There is some texture change. You'll notice if you freeze and then thaw some cheddar cheese, it will start to be a crumbly texture. It's still very usable in a lot of things. It's just not so good for, slicing and things like that. Soft cheeses, say like brie and some of those, can't freeze them. They do not turn out well after thawing. They're grainy and the texture is totally gone. Now, one of my best techniques is to shred the cheese before you freeze it. This bowl here is some mozzarella cheese that was pre-shredded and frozen and then thawed in the fridge overnight, and this one was fresh. You can tell that the textures are basically the same. The second item is avocados. Can you freeze avocados? If you answered yes, you are correct. Avocados are a little bit tricky to freeze though, because as you'll know, by dealing with avocados, you can get browning really fast. So the big secret is to freeze avocados using a vacuum sealer. Now, I don't always recommend using a vacuum sealer for freezer meals, but if you are freezing avocados, it's pretty much a must. This one was frozen using the vacuum sealer. See, it's still green and lovely. This one, I just got as much air out as I could in this quart-sized bag. And you can tell it's browned, the air got to it, so this is why I like to freeze avocado in vacuum sealer bags. The third surprise item is fresh herbs. Can you freeze fresh herbs? If you answered no, you'd be wrong. You can freeze fresh herbs, and this is how I do it. Take all the leaves off of the fresh herbs. You can chop them, or you can just have the herbs whole. You add them to an ice cube tray, and then you add oil. I did olive oil on this half and vegetable oil on the other half, and freeze them in ice cubes, just like this. Then you can take them out of their ice cube trays. There's a few right here, and just go ahead and add them to a quart-sized freezer bag, like so. And then, add them back into your freezer. Then when you have a soup, you can just pop one of these cubes right into the pot. Mystery item here, number 4, is pesto. Can you freeze pesto? If you answered yes, you'd be correct. I like to freeze these in ice cube trays, and you can just pop them out and stick them in a quart-sized freezer bag and just toss one in a soup or on top of your pasta, whatever. They freeze great. Are you ready to find out what's under box number 5? Eggs, raw eggs. Can you freeze raw eggs? If you answered no, you'd be wrong. You can freeze raw eggs. But the trick is that you have to remove the shells before you freeze them. You can scramble them and then pour them into a gallon-sized freezer-sized bag. You can thaw and have fresh scrambled eggs anytime you like. Or you can crack each egg into its own ice cube compartment, freeze it, and then you can make fried eggs. So you can freeze egg. Mystery item number 6 is cabbage and lettuce. Can you freeze cabbage and lettuce? If you answered no, you'd be correct. If any of you guys have ever frozen lettuce, even like things, watermelon, cantaloupe, anything with super high water content in is not great for freezing. The texture changes horribly. It gets limp and sometimes slimy after it's been frozen. So this one's definitely a no. You cannot freeze cabbage or lettuce. Who's ready to see what's under mystery box number 7? Okay, here it is. Raw potatoes. Can you freeze raw potatoes? That's your question. If you answered yes, you'd be wrong. You have to cook them if you want to freeze them. I did a little test yesterday where I sliced and diced some raw potatoes, put them in a freezer-safe bag, removed all the air, and froze them. Then I added them to the fridge, let them thaw, and this is what you get with raw potatoes. Gross, right? It's so gross. This is just disgusting. They turn brown and they're just like spongy. You can't really feel that, but they're really spongy and just a whole different texture. Definitely a no, you cannot freeze raw potatoes. You can cook the potatoes up before you add them to different soups and things like that. But my favorite time-saving tip for potatoes, save some time and buy your potatoes already blanched when you're making your freezer meals. Are you ready to see what's under mystery box number 8? Raw meat. Can you freeze raw meat? If you answered yes, you'd be correct. You can freeze raw meat, and I do it all the time in my freezer meals, actually. I make freezer meals by adding raw meat to the bag, and then I freeze it, and then thaw and cook it fresh the day of. One quick tip I have is, if you are freezing hamburger, you have the choice to freeze it in the raw state, or you can freeze it already pre-cooked. I do this all the time to save me time on the day that, I want to make a hamburger soup or something like that. So now it's time to see what item number 9 is. Ready? Mayonnaise. Can you freeze mayonnaise? If you answered yes, you'd be wrong. Wrong. Okay? You cannot freeze mayonnaise. It will separate after freezing, and it's not good. It's not good at all. So don't freeze mayonnaise. Don't even freeze mayonnaise in casseroles. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work so good. Are you ready for the final mystery box? Mystery box number 10 is so big, is so great, that you are gonna freak right out. A whole lot of other dairy stuff. We have butter, sour cream, cream cheese, milk, and half. So, can you freeze these items? If you answered yes, you'd be correct. If you answered no, you'd also be correct. So let's dive into these items and I'll show you which ones freeze well and which ones don't. Here we go. So for sour cream, you cannot freeze sour cream. It does not do well. It gets all like curdly and strange. Ooh. Here's what normal sour cream should look like. Smooth and creamy, okay? Freeze it, curdle, not freezing it, very nice. Now cream cheese is one that does not freeze well. Here is just a regular cream cheese, and here is the frozen and thawed cream cheese. Definitely has some texture change, so let's see how this tastes. I'm just gonna use my finger. Regular cream cheese, delicious. Let's see if this is changed taste-wise. Whoa, I can't even get any. It's all like crumbling down. Definitely not the same. Now you can still use this, even though it's a little bit texture change in some of your, casseroles and things like that. But yeah, you will have some texture change for sure when you're freezing cream cheese. Now a half and fresh whipping cream it's not good. They will separate after freezing. So that's definitely a no. Now, butter is a different story. Butter freezes perfectly. Gallons of milk and half gallons of milk. These can be frozen. So this one I froze and thawed, and this one is just fresh. So let's see how they look. Fresh milk, perfect. I have noticed when you thaw frozen milk, sometimes it will separate a little bit, and so then all you have to do is just kind of shake it up, and then it's usually just perfectly fine. So look, very, very similar. I really can't tell the difference. So freezing milk, it can be a great money-saving tip if you, especially if you get milk on sale. You can freeze it if you have the room. Thanks for playing today's game. I'm so glad that you were here with me, and congratulations to those who knew all the answers. That means you're kind of like a freezer meal expert already, if you got them right. If you didn't, well, now you know what you can and what you cannot freeze. And that's the end of today's game. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure and like and subscribe to my channel. Bye for now.